Hi, me again. Still okay? Okay. After maybe this break, so hold on a little bit longer. Okay, so I want to share with you this morning some work that we've been doing actually with the community over the past, I'd say, year and a half. And it's kind of reached a plateau now. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about this topic of enabling choice and discovery. It was brought up a few times during the regular sessions. There was a question about it yesterday during the Q&A. So we here in Developers Day can dive a little bit more into the nitty-gritty details about what it means when we say that we're enabling choice in discovery. So I'll talk a little bit about the background, a little bit about what the points of integration are, and then I'll show you a few reference implementations of what we've done, and then we can talk about next steps. So okay, first of all, why am I here talking about choice and discovery, right? Ex Libris is a vendor. We sell two great discovery products. We sell Primo and Summon, Guy's two children, as he mentioned. So why are we talking about choice in discovery? So we understand that some institutions will always want to implement either their own discovery system or applications or screens, either for an entire discovery solution, so all of the ILS content, or even for parts of it, for particular parts of the repository, for additional content from things that are stored outside the library system. And so there are a few use cases for why you might be interested in either your own discovery tool or a discovery app or script or something, some subset of your discovery world. So that might be because, as I said, you might want to have a completely tailored discovery experience, either, again, on a whole system or for a particular part of your discovery experience. And you might have other content, which is from other systems, digital repositories, institutional repositories, etc. So that's fine, and Alma has supported integrating with open source discovery for a few years now. But in the past couple of years, we've put an emphasis and a focus on it to make sure that it works well. And we've done this with a few different open source discovery systems. And we've worked specifically in the past couple of months to release a whole bunch of additional APIs to make sure that the integration works even better. So now, even if you're not interested in your own open source discovery system, or even if you're not interested in building a discovery tool, it doesn't mean you can, well, if you want to, you can close your eyes for the next 20 minutes, but I'll share with you some changes we've made to the APIs, which might help you in other apps that you're building. Okay, so you might be able to benefit from some of these API changes if you're trying to build request forms or other types of tools or listing electronic availability. There are other tools you might want to build which could benefit from the API changes that we've made available. So still worthwhile keeping at least one ear open. So what kind of open source discovery systems am I talking about? So there's homegrown, okay? And there's also, two of the most popular ones are Blacklight and VuFind. I know that some folks in this room probably use VuFind, and Blacklight is one that we've worked well with also in the past couple of months. So I'll just talk for a few minutes now about the points of integration, right? If you want to get data out of Alma and put it and make it available someplace else, what are the various points of integration that you might need to think about? And again, we could be talking about all of your repository, or we could be talking about subsets you want to make available. Okay? So there's this beautiful mock-up that we have on the developer network that kind of talks about if you want to make certain pieces available, how might you do that? So the one thing is you have to be able to search the data that's in your repository, and that you can do by publishing and harvesting. That's the way that you do that, right? You publish your data someplace else, and then somebody has to harvest it and make it available in that system. We also have real-time availability, right? So you want to know for a certain resource, is it available and where is it available? Okay, in what locations or in what packages is it available, depending on if it's a print or an electronic resource. So we have a real-time availability API that you can call to get back that information. Okay. The third point is fulfillment services. So again, you might want to know, okay, a user has found a certain journal. What are the available links to that journal? Or a user has found a certain digital resource. How can they access the digital resource? Or a user has found a certain print resource that they want to be able to make a request on. And again, you can also do requests on other types of resources as well, right? You can have physical, you can loan out iPads or tablets, and you might want to enable requests on those types of materials as well. Okay? So we have fulfillment options, the ability to understand what the request types are that are available, and then of course you can use APIs to make those requests as well. And then the last piece is, and many of you have actually built these applications, where you're making available pieces of the user's library card. Right? This could be in a mobile app, this could be on a web app, and this utilizes all of the user APIs that we have. You can show them user information, you can show fines and fees, you can show requests, cancel requests, you can show loans, you can renew loans, all of this with the user APIs. And we've seen, if you look at the graph of our API usage, we actually see the most usage in these two areas, in the repository bibliographic area, and that of course includes all of the bibliographic records and holdings and items records. And then the second area that we see is the users. So part of it's probably Cambridge use of updating 200,000 users. But we've also seen some other use of the user APIs as well. And you can utilize those to build your own library card. So I'll just show you a few screenshots of how this might look in a sample reference application, right? So you have here real-time availability. And so what we're doing is we're getting a whole bunch of records back, and we're doing an AJAX request. And based on that, we can paint the screen in a different way. We can say, okay, this resource is available, this resource is not available. I can say it's green or it's orange. And then once I get back a particular resource and whether or not it's available, I want to say, okay, now I want to drill down, right? What are the locations that this resource is available in? What are the request options we have for this resource? And so I can drill further down there. Okay, and then of course we've got the patron services, which I can do loans and fees and fines and requests, as I mentioned before. So let's talk for a minute about a continuum of customization. So we, of course, focus on the user experience for our patrons. We want to make sure that our patrons are able to access our content and our resources in a way that makes the most sense. And every institution has their own thoughts about what the best way is to make that information available. And so there's been kind of this evolution of how you customize discovery going over many years now. And I think on the Primo side, for example, we've reached a certain level of customization that makes it even easier to customize Primo today than it has been for a long time. And that's using those two boxes on the left. So this continuum here is showing, okay, I want to have a customized user experience for discovery. So if I'm in the world of Primo, starting on the left, I can use the Primo Studio, which Shaw will demonstrate for us in a few sessions, and I can use that to very easily change the basic aspects of Primo, like the colors we saw, logos, etc. And I can also use the Primo Studio to install into Primo add-ons that others have built. So if my continuum is from the most amount of convenience and the least amount of technical effort required, so on my left-hand side I can change colors and logos, and I can install other people's add-ons relatively easily. Now if I want to do some additional work and customize it even more, I can use the Open Discovery Framework to build my own add-ons in the Primo world, right? So I can build pieces of functionality. I can combine these two talks, the first talk, and I can build a linked data widget, and then I can use the Open Discovery Framework to put that linked data widget into my Primo environment. And then I can share that widget with others so that people can use the Primo Studio to install it. And all that makes a lot of sense, right? And so that enables me to customize my discovery experience within Primo. And still use the commercial product, but still get a customized user experience. And then if I want to make that jump and say, okay, I want to either build a full-fledged discovery app or build a tool for certain pieces of my content, so I can jump over into some kind of open source discovery tool, and I can use the fulfillment mashup, which is actually the same mashup that, that Primo uses with Alma when it's not Primo V. So there's a piece of mashup, a piece of HTML that Alma provides with all the fulfillment options available there. So it has all the location details, request options. You can make a request within that mashup. And so that allows you to build, a relatively simple, straightforward discovery interface or tool, but you can still let Alma handle all the complex fulfillment options. Okay, so I can build a little bit of a more customized search experience or customized discovery experience, and let Alma handle the fulfillment. And then I can go all the way to the right, meaning maximum flexibility, but of course that means the most effort required. And I can actually use APIs to build all the fulfillment options as well. So I can get location details, I can get even item level information, I can get request options for a particular user and know what kind of request they can do. I can get details about whatever electronic packages this resource is available in, and I can provide links to those packages. So I can build all that functionality myself. So that's, again, starting with Primo Studio, provides me the ability to customize with relatively little effort my Primo interface. Open Discovery Framework allows me to build custom add-ons and deploy them to Primo. I can build some kind of open source discovery tool or interface and then let Alma handle all the complex fulfillment logic. Okay? And this is all this complex fulfillment logic, right? I'm not going to read this whole slide, but there's a lot of stuff that little mashup does. So you can utilize that if you want to within your own interface. And then finally, I can go all the way over to the right and I can utilize these APIs to build out my interface. Okay, so what are these APIs that I keep talking about? So we have released these discovery APIs over the past couple of months that give you efficient access to all the information you need to build out your discovery tool or application. And as I mentioned, these APIs can be used for other use cases as well. Anything related to delivering content to your patrons, you can use these APIs to do that. So what are these APIs? So 3 major changes that have been made. The first is we provide additional fields within the print, electronic, and digital availability so that, again, we're trying to expose all the data that you want to build an interface. You can show your users how you can get whatever this resource is. Second, we have a new request options API that show you for a particular user what request options they have. And third, we have the ability to retrieve items for all holding records. So let's see a little bit more detail here. So someone asked before in my first talk about how you can get back availability information. So this is using the bib API, right? So it's bibs and then a particular MMS ID. By the way, you can also do this and get a list of bibs back. So these availability expand parameters. This works on a single bib and also on multiple bibs. Okay, so for example, you might get a whole list of bibs and be able to show availability for all of them with one single call. So you can put in that expand parameter. You can say, I want my print availability, I want electronic availability, and I want digital availability. And we return back these pseudo fake mark tags with a whole bunch of subfields. And these subfields provide for you all of the information, again, that you in theory, will need to present the availability options to your users. So again, this is on the retrieve bib documentation. So we list there in the print, electronic, and digital availability what all the fields are that we return there. Again, the goal is to be able to give this information in one call so you can use that to present to your users. So that's the first point, additional availability information in the availability fields. The second, this request options API. Okay? So you can say, for a particular bibliographic record or a particular item, if you want to do an item level request, I want to be able to return to you all the request types that are available. Now, of course, we know that request types are dependent on the user. So you can pass in a user ID and say, okay, for this particular user, what are his request options? What can he do on this resource? And we return back a bunch of different types of requests. Your standard Alma request types, like hold and digitization. We'll also return back general electronic services. Okay, so if you've configured general electronic services within Alma, we'll return those back in this API. And also broker ILL. So if you've configured broker ILL requests in Alma, we can return back a list of those. So you can then allow users to link out to the broker and request this item or this resource via resource sharing. So all of those will come back in this API, and then you can use that to make a list of different options for your user, for example. And those are documented here under our bibs documentation. So as I mentioned, we have that on request options both on the bib level and on the item level. Okay, the last improvement or change that we've made is we now allow you to retrieve all items for a particular bibliographic record. Okay? So for a long time, we were using the standard REST hierarchy, right? So in REST, we say, your plural and then your individual. And if there's a hierarchy, then you have to say your bibs, your bib ID, then your holdings, your holding ID, and then finally your items and an item ID. So that becomes a long URL. And that's, we felt that was pure REST. And sometimes pure REST and efficiency butt heads. And so we were seeing in our logs a lot of people who were doing the following. Give it an MS ID, give me all the holdings records, and then for each holding, give me all the items. So that meant there were a lot of requests for items. Some people are nodding, some people have done that. We see it in our logs, it's okay. You can admit it, it's fine. So we wanted to come a little bit more towards efficiency, and so we now allow you to say a bib ID /holdings /all. Doesn't matter which holding it's in, give me back all of the items for this bibliographic record. Okay, by the way, there's a shortcut if you don't know, if you're looking for a particular item and you have the barcode, so you can go into, you can say items barcode equals, some syntax on the developer network, and that will redirect you to the full URL. So just as a point, I don't know if anyone tried to do that, but if you're not aware of it, there is a shortcut if you have a barcode. But this gives you another way of getting back all the items, regardless of the holding. And in discovery scenarios, of course, you want to be able to perhaps for a serial get back all the different items and allow a user to filter based on description or volume or whatever. But this also, again, as I mentioned, can be used for other scenarios as well. So anytime you had to go in and get a list of items and you were doing it per holding, you can now do it with that all keyword. And so if you go to the retrieve item list API, it says down there you can use the all in the holding ID. Okay, so those are some changes to the APIs that we've made over the past couple months to enable these scenarios, and of course you can use them for other purposes as well. So what are some implementations of this? Well, a few institutions have implemented open source discovery, either full-blown solutions or subsets. At the University of Pennsylvania, okay, they're using here, in this case, they get back a record. They are using the fulfillment mashup in this case, and they're moving over to a fully API-driven model. Of course, you can log in, and you get request options that are meant for that particular user. At Temple also, they're using a Blacklight implementation, also moving to the API-based. And then at the University of Washington, Madison, they have a homegrown solution that's using APIs only. So VuFind, which is a popular discovery choice, implemented an ILS driver for Alma in version 5. So version 5 was released just last month, and they're using the APIs. It's a fully API-driven model, and it's based on work done at the AK Vienna and also at Villanova in the States. Okay, so now if you're using VuFind, you can use VuFind against Alma using those same integration points that I mentioned. And here's an example of the AK Vienna VuFind interface against Alma. This is a test version of VuFind that we have against our repository. So you can search, you can find out if it's available with those green buttons. Looks very similar, right? You can get back a list of items. You can place a hold request. All of these things look very similar, all using those same APIs that I mentioned before. And you've got the Patron card functionality. Here's a list of finds, etc. Okay, so I'll take a few minutes now. We actually have a blacklight reference implementation over Alma with the code on GitHub that you're welcome to take a look at. Again, just to play with. Our expectation is, of course, this is not for everyone, not for most customers, as a matter of fact. But if you're looking to offer a particular piece of functionality, like maybe I'm looking to offer a list of electronic portfolios, maybe I'm looking to offer request options for devices, as I mentioned. So there's a bunch of different use cases where this might be helpful. And the code or the tool I'm about to show you, you can take bits and pieces of the code to see how it's implemented and then implement it perhaps in your use case. Okay, so this is a blacklight instance available at that URL, which was on the slide. You can go in and play with it. And you can see here that I am logged in, and I've used a whole bunch of the, actually in this case I used social login integrated with Alma to be able to log in. And because I'm logged in, I can see my user details and my requests, of which I have none, and my fines and fees. That's the basic Patron card functionality that most people here will be familiar with, and many may have implemented it in other solutions. So in addition to that, I can go ahead and search for a particular search term. And what it's doing is you didn't see it, it's going behind the scenes and doing that real-time availability call, using Ajax, and it's going for all of these records on the page, going to bibs, getting back availability for all of these records. Okay? If there's an online version or a print version, we go ahead and light up the appropriate box. And then when I click on the physical copy, I get a list of locations. And this is information that's coming directly out of that AVA that I mentioned. So remember I talked about that AVA, the availability mark pseudo field. So this information comes directly out of there. And I can even drill down further and I can say, okay, for this particular location, what items are available? And it can give me item level information as well. So I can go back to locations. And I have here also the number of requests that are on this resource. And I've got this drop down to make a new request. And of course, that list comes from the Request Options API. Right? So I've got here all sorts of broker choices. I've got perhaps general electronic resources, request assistance for this resource, and I've got the hold request, which is an Alma-based request. So I can come here, and I can just go ahead within my little app, and I can specify my library, and I can make a test comment, and I can create the request. And within my tool, now I know that this user has the right to create a hold request because I got that back from the request options. And now I've gone ahead and created a request for that user. So that's in your monograph. Okay. I can also do can also do a serial option. Okay, and for serials, I might want to, sorry, this is an online version. For online, I can go ahead and click here, and I get a list of either electronic or digital options. So here I have an electronic. I can go ahead and click on this, and I can be taken to whatever electronic resource it is. And I can also do digital. So here I can click on my digital, and I get right to the Alma digital repository. So if you have digital resources in Alma, you can use these APIs to make that available in whatever interface you want. Okay? And then finally, I have also the ability to do serials. And within serials, I can just modify my interface a little bit so I can show, for example, all of the items I mentioned before. And then I can even offer options to limit based on chronology or volume, etc. So here I've got this location, and within there I've got a whole bunch of items. In this case, I've got 36 items, and I can go ahead and move through them, or I can limit based on volume, etc. So again, the idea is that if you have a particular use case that would require some of these features, you can use that code if you want to get you started. Okay, so just to summarize what we said. We're committed, we've said that several times, to facilitating open source discovery systems, and we're committed to enabling institutions to implement your own delivery and discovery options at whatever scale you want to. Okay? And it might be, if you recall back to that continuum, it might be that in most cases, Primo customizable features with Primo Studio or the Open Discovery Framework is enough. But in some cases, you might want to add additional delivery and discovery options, and our goal is to make that as easy for you as possible. And we intend to support customers at any place on that spectrum. So if you want to do Primo Studio to make small customizations, all the way to a full-fledged discovery tool. And then, as I said, hopefully these APIs can even be useful to you in other scenarios, especially the all items as an example, request options for some of the cases that I mentioned. And so if you're interested in hearing more about this, there's actually a Google group for Alma and open source discovery if you are interested in that aspect of it. There's the link to that reference implementation that I mentioned if you want to grab some of the code there for particular pieces that might be of interest to you. And we also have a bunch of blogs available on the developer network at that tag that kind of walk through a bunch of these different pieces. So again, if you're saying, okay, I would like to figure out how to use the request options API to make a small, device loan tool. So we have a blog that talks specifically about the request options API. So take a look there at those blogs, and hopefully they will help get you started. I think we have a minute for questions if you have, but thank you.
Have you any plans for adding an HTTP2 layer to the APIs, which would help performance, especially from browser-driven things?
To add an HTTP2 layer to our APIs. No plans right now, but come talk to me in the break. We can talk about the use cases.
Hello. About the request options API, if you make a call based on BIP, do you get all the item level options from the same call?
You're asking if that happens?
Yes, I'm asking if you can get.
You can make that request options call either specifying a bib, or you can make it specifying a particular item as well. So you can go to the item URL / request options, either level.
Yes. And I get everything you can do with items when I ask from the BIP with one call.
Right. It depends on if you're configured Alma to make request level options or bib request level, item level request or bib level request within Alma.
So it depends on Alma. All right, thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
In one of the last Q&A sessions, it was said that especially the VuFind connector was actively developed also by Libris, or there was strong collaboration between the VuFind team and Libris developers.
It was developed as an open source development done by Villanova and by AK Vienna. We just provided assistance, consultation. We're now working with them on enhancements that can be made in order to take advantage of some of the new APIs, but it was done by the community.
Okay. Yeah, then kind of my question is obsolete. Thank you.
I'm going to take one if that's okay. So have tests, the Blacklight implementations that are live now, have they tested performance of search, etc., versus the Primo implementation, and is there any performance difference in terms of response time using the APIs?
The search is actually done in their case against their local Solr. So I don't know if there's it's an apples to apples comparison, but they're using the fulfillment mashup or APIs, and so far it's going well for them.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Other questions, please? Here.
I have one more, but it's complicated, so I'll talk to you over the break.
You always need the MMID to retrieve data via the API. Is there a simple possibility to start with other BIP IDs?
So you can do an SRU search with other IDs, and then based on that you can get back the MSID and then go into your APIs that way.
Okay.
Anybody else? One time, second time? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. We'll have a break right now, and we'll be back in 25 minutes or so.